We have an interview with Joey McGuire, Texas Tech head coach, about this massive game, coming up this weekend. And without further ado, here is our talk with Joey McGuire.
Mike Craven, Republic of Football, here with Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire. Coach, how are you doing today on this Monday afternoon?
Doing good, man. I appreciate you having me on. This is a lot of fun doing this stuff with you guys.
2-0 start to the Big 12. Also, the first time you've had the same quarterback start for the first 5 games of the season since you started there at Texas Tech. What are the tangible benefits, maybe behind the scenes, of kind of having the same guy under center each game?
Man, it's been huge. That's kind of like the running joke, I guess, of where people ask me what's the season is going to be like. And I have said all along, well, if Baron Morton, takes the snaps that we need him to take, we're going to be in good shape. And it's been huge, just the chemistry that he has with the tight ends, the receivers, running backs, and his leadership. Man, he's really taken on a lot. He's a team captain. He's got a huge voice in that locker room, and you can't question his toughness. So there's so many people that respect him.
When kind of over the spring, summer, even into fall camp, did you start feeling like his shoulder was going to be fine and he can handle everything? And what was your confidence level with him going into the year?
Yeah, it was really, whenever we shut him down in the spring, he was having some soreness that in the past was, it was leaving. He wasn't as sore, or he wasn't sore at all. And then all of a sudden, after one of our scrimmages, he was sore Sunday, he was sore Monday, he was sore Tuesday. And so we're like, let's shut him down and let's send him to a couple of places to get it checked out. The doctors that talked to him, went through everything. And I think the biggest thing, the last doctor, he was like, hey, here's where you're at. I feel good about where you're at, but there's a guy, a physical therapist, that a lot of the NFL and Major League Baseball players, especially pitchers, go to in Jacksonville. And he said, you ought to go out there for a week. And he and our head trainer traveled out there, and they came up with a really great plan. And I think that once, Barron felt comfortable with that plan, I think it just started changing. And, every time I would talk to him, after a throwing session, wherever, he goes, man, Coach, I feel better than I've ever felt. And coming out of camp, he goes, Coach, I hadn't felt this good since I was in high school, and so that just makes you feel better, because he's one of those guys. I mean, we told him, we said, hey, look, we got to be honest with this deal. We're going to go in this direction because, it doesn't help, because he's a tough guy. So he can easily say, hey, I'm fine, and him not be fine. Somebody asked me that they were like, we're playing, I think it was Arizona. It might've been North Texas. And he throws a field out on just a rope, and he's on the far hash. And I'm like, well, that tells you right there how the shoulder feels, because that's a big boy throw, and especially the way he threw it. And so I just think after that, going back to your question, after that June visit with a physical therapist, man, he had a great program. And, man, our strength staff and our training staff have done such a phenomenal job with him.
And we look at your box score, Coach, against Cincinnati, and it's 251 passing yards to 231 rushing yards. Like, you found a balance that Texas Tech, the offense, hasn't had in a long time. But we talk on the podcast about Baron Morton being an excellent game manager, right? And some people take that as a quarterback. It's like, oh, that's an insult. Like, that's a total compliment. If he throws one interception against Cincinnati, y'all might not come out and win that game. How have you seen him improve in that area, game managing?
I think that I agree. I think that's a compliment, because so many people go out and say, man, he's a gunslinger, and not to compare him to the greatest quarterback going right now, but look at last year and this year, what Pat Mahomes is doing. You could easily say he's a game manager. They're winning 17-10, and he's not turning the ball over, stuff like that. But the one thing that Barron, I think once he knew he was QB1, like this is his team, it kind of like a light went off, or he flipped a switch of like, I've got to get really serious about preparing for a football game and not just like let my talent carry me through that football game. I think a lot of really good young quarterbacks, they let their talent, and they've lived off their talent. But, man, this is such a cerebral game. and defenses are so good about hiding coverages and masking coverages. And what I've seen him more than anything is just how he's studying every single week. He's up here with Coach Kitley constantly, and they're going through everything. Hey, we're going to check it here, or hey, leave this play on. We've got a good play call. And the other thing, I saw this in the bowl game, and it's a little bit different from when we were in the bowl game, but you still have enough time, if you're doing it efficiently, is the helmet, the coach to player communication. Baron Morton has excelled whenever it comes to that, of like, hey, alert this. And because they've spent all week long going through all that, he's getting it like that. So it's making a big difference too, of, hey, here comes this, or hey, this is going to be open, or, see this first, make this your first read. And Baron's really excelling with that.
And one of his favorite targets, Coy Aiken, he had 2 touchdowns last week. I was listening to your press conference today, and you said that Coy has a size 14 foot and a size 12 foot.
Yeah.
Please explain that story to us, how that happened.
Whenever they told me that, I was like, that's whatever, guys. And then Coy and I were on the bus together. And I said, hey, Coy, tell me the story about your foot. And so whenever he was younger, he was roping. His dad's in fact, his dad won a national championship, at Tarleton for rodeo. And so Coy's rodeoed all his life, and he's roping. Had a pretty new horse. He stepped off of it. The horse had kind of stepped over the rope, so he kind of spooked, and the horse stepped on his leg and broke his leg. And he gets up, and he's kind of limping, and his dad goes, "Are you okay?" And in Coy fashion goes, "Yeah, I'm okay." And he wasn't. So his dad goes, "Go back down." Well, he hit a growth spurt whenever he was in the cast. And so one foot has been behind the other. And I told him, I said, well, so you wear a size 14 and a size 12? And he goes, no, I wear a size 14. I just order these socks off of Amazon that are thicker to fill up the shoe. And so I said, well, if you want to, we've got cleats for you. And he's like, no, coach, I'm used to this. I'm okay. But that's typical. I'm telling y'all, that is typical. Coy is just man, he is so freaking tough.
I remember that state championship game where he was playing. He didn't have any offers. Everybody's looking around like, how does this kid not have a bunch of attention? I mean, did you kind of feel like you kind of hit a jackpot there with his lack of attention? Why do you think he didn't have a bunch of offers until y'all came calling?
Man, yeah, I was really surprised. It's funny. Clay McGuire's on my staff now, and he was like, man, we were really pushing hard to get him to Washington State, and he's like, I thought we were going to get him. Yeah, I always surprised when a guy like that, because, it's different if you're undersized, or if you're 5'9" and you're playing slot receiver, and, it's one of those, like, some guys can get overlooked, or people can justify, well, his size. Coy's a big guy. I mean, he's over 6 foot. And so I was really surprised. And with us, we would have looked at him sooner, but I was full. We didn't have the scholarships, and I was coming in on a new roster. And so I really didn't know everybody on my roster yet, who's staying, who's going. The one thing that I did not want to do is force anyone out the first year, or ask them to leave if it was a situation, in the locker room. I didn't know them well enough to be able to say, hey, I don't know if you can play here or not. And so it worked out perfect, man. We got him to walk on, and by the time he got to campus, we had a scholarship for him.
What is the culture behind the scenes of walk-ons that can turn into scholarship players, that can turn into players? I know there's been talk about eliminating the walk-ons with new scholarship stuff. In your mind, what do walk-ons kind of give to a program?
Well, I was really lucky. I always say this. I got to give credit, a lot of credit, when most of the stuff I do is Matt Rule. Here and definitely at Baylor with Coach Rule, walk-ons they're so different. They're so valued because Coach Rule was a walk-on at Penn State, and he knew what that was going through. Garrett, my son, was a walk-on at Baylor, ended up earning a scholarship. Coach Aranda, it's a really good story. But Coach Aranda ended up, granting him a scholarship, and Garrett earned it. And so I think the biggest thing with walk-ons, I mean, I just look at it as a roster number. Like, I have 123 guys on my team, and it doesn't matter. You got to play the best guys. And I mean, we've got like one of my captains 2 weeks ago was Joseph Plunk, walk on from Amarillo, Tascosa. I'm sure I'll have a couple more guys like that throughout the year that'll be a captain of the week. And they bring so much to the team whenever it comes to the culture, because if you can get guys that are walk-ons and all of a sudden now they're playing and they're earning it, it just gives you so much more, I think, credibility with the team of saying, hey, we're going to play the best players. It really doesn't matter what your last name is or where you come from.
So for those who don't know, Garrett, your son is a wide receivers coach at Nebraska right now. How often do you get to talk to him during the season and talk ball? And also, we can admit that Dylan Rayola looks exactly like Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yes. No doubt. No doubt. And I love that Mahomes embraces that. And, from what I understand and from Garrett and a little bit from Patrick is, they do talk a lot. Man, I talk to Garrett every night, or in the mornings. We text a lot. I want to know we want the McGuires to win. Our household is a lot better whenever both McGuires win. And, we both got to win this last week. But, he and I are so close, and I think one thing, too, we both spent time with Coach Rule, him as a player, now as a coach, and I spent time with Coach. And so I think, and I talked to Matt a lot. I talked to Coach Rule a lot. I mean, after that Washington State game, I called him and said, hey, man, I know you're busy, but could you please watch this game as a coach and give me some pointers, man? I'm lost. And so I'm lucky to have that relationship. But me and Garrett, man, he's my best friend when it comes to, I'm as close to him as anybody in the world. And we talk a lot about football.
So I know you can't give away the trade secrets of what Coach Rule told you exactly to fix, but you're 2-0 since then. Was it like a attitude thing or a schematic thing, or like what has led to this run you've been on, this 2-game run you went on?
It's a mixture of both. One thing that he did say, and I mean, we didn't have Taj against Washington State, and that's not saying that we would have won that game because Washington State's a good football team. But, one thing he said to me on the offensive side, he goes, man, I think you are one of the best gap scheme teams running counter and power in the country. And he goes, y'all went away from that. Like, you can't allow people to take away, or you think you can't run something just because their scheme, because they've got to match what you do because we're good at it. He said, I thought you did too much of that, not enough of that. And then he just talked about the energy on defense of when we're in a 3-man versus a 4-man. I will tell you, he watched the game because he goes, hey, pull your tape up. On play 3, this. On play 8, this. On play 52, this. I mean, it was not, hey, I watched it and hey, buddy, I don't know if it was very specific stuff of, hey, is this what you're trying to do? And some stuff that he knows me really well, that he's like, Joey, this is not a Joey McGuire team. So what's your issue? Like, why is it not a Joey McGuire team? And so it helped a bunch, and we really have carried a lot of those comments through the last 3 weeks of even going to the game, reminding the coaches, hey, this is what we need to be doing.
You brought up, Taj missing that Washington State game. I was on the recruiting beat when he was at Manor, and I used to stump for him on the Fab 55, and everybody'd look at him and be like, well, he doesn't do anything great, right? Like, he's not fast. Yeah. He doesn't look great in shorts. When did you realize this is our guy and this is what we need to build our offense around?
It's you said it perfectly, and it's a little bit different conversation with the NFL scouts. But the thing with him, I think it was really after the West Virginia game last year. Yeah, I go back. We've kicked ourselves multiple times. In hindsight, it's 2020. But if I'd have known that Taj was going to be a guy that I could hand the ball off to 30 times, and he wake up the next day and look like he could go for another 30 carries, we would have handed the ball to him 30 times in the Wyoming game. But it was really after that West Virginia game of like, how many times did he touch it in critical situations? How many times does he need to touch it in critical situations? And I think he got in a rhythm of knowing that, we're going to really work on patterning everything around some of the stuff that he does in the run game. And our offense really took off whenever we did that.
Going on the road this week to play Arizona at an ungodly time, by the way. We can talk about that in a second. I don't know how I'm going to stay up for that thing. How much does the running game and having Taj, be a part of that going to help this group? And kind of how have you gone about maybe changing a few things on the road to get this group to perform better in those road games?
Yeah. That's a big deal. I researched actually this morning before our staff meeting, and then after our staff meeting went into a deeper dive. But we're 3-9 on the road. And those 3 are playing to win. We have 7 of them, and those 3 that we won, we're winning or tying 5 or more. And it's one of the biggest things that's going to be the message this week is good football has to travel. We've got to take care of the football. We turned the ball over 4 times against Washington State, and so you can't do that. I got to put our defense in good position. It might be that I'm not going for it. Y'all know I go for it a lot. I might not be going for it on the 30-yard line. I might be punting right there, stuff like that. And then the biggest thing that we've done the last 3 weeks, once Taj came back, is let's establish the run game. Let's establish Taj Brooks. He creates a very physical game. And so let's go out and establish it. And so I know I'm not giving any secrets away. If you watch the last 3, we're going to come out and really try to establish the run. That sets up the play action pass. Now, all of a sudden, you've got explosive plays like the play that we threw to Boy Akins, who ended up breaking a tackle and scoring a touchdown. And so that's a big part of what we got to do. We got to get Taj going.
Are we going to start getting some Big 12 after dark now with like Arizona adding to the conference?
It's crazy. I mean, I the one thing I will tell you I appreciate, it's supposed to be like they're having a heat wave right now. If you can have a heat wave out there because it's always hot. And so when we kick off, it's going to be like 95 degrees at 8 o'clock. And so I guess I can appreciate that it's not going to be as hot as what it is. It's just, it's kind of the new Big 12. It's really the new college football. Everybody's going to be dealing with it to some extent. Maybe the SEC, maybe not as much, but the Big Ten is going to be dealing with it. And, I do wish if it's not in September or early October, if the weather's okay, you wished it was like a 6 o'clock kick, which would be an 8 o'clock kick here.
All right, Coach, before we let you go, we know you're a football sicko like the both of us right here.
Yes.
Former Texas high school football coach. What's your high school football watching schedule like on a Friday night? Can you watch any on a Friday night?
Oh, yeah. So this is no doubt. And everybody laughs at me. I actually sent a picture to Aaron Hardigan and the crew. I was watching it, in the hotel room. So what we do, I have my app set up and we go to the movies on Friday night after we get through dinner, and literally whatever movie it is, I'm kind of watching the movie, but I am following the score. So I have all my commits scores loaded on the app, and then all my buddies, I know if Allen's winning because of Lee Wigington. I know if Dickinson's winning because of, Snelson. And so I'm usually texting those guys after their win. And then we'll be in Arizona. So I'll have the TV, we'll be streaming, all the scoreboard, of what's going on. And so wherever we're at, if we're outside the state of Texas, my video guy comes up and hooks up the computer to the TV so I know what's going on Friday night. And then when I wake up on Saturday, our recruiting staff hands me a sheet of paper, and it's an Excel sheet of all the scores of anybody we're recruiting. And so, man, we know, and now we're FaceTiming those guys and saying, great game, or you got to bounce back next week. That's great in recruiting, but that's just as much for me because I want to know, I'll tell you, I don't have to say his name, but, I was rooting for Cedar Hill to win that game. They got beat in overtime, but I was okay with it because maybe somebody that's committed to Texas Tech had an interception. I don't know that for sure, but that's the stuff that we follow constantly, and I do it because I love high school football and of course I love recruiting.
Joey McGuire, there's no one else like him. Appreciate you coming on, Coach.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, guys.
All right, that was Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire. Always great having him on the show.